After uploading my video on the so-called Artemis 2 moon mission launch, I point out how this is nothing more than a flyby. You would think if they supposedly landed on the moon in 1969, and they did it several times all the way to 1972, there would be colonies on the moon, vast colonies, by 2026, and they're just doing a ridiculous so-called pass-by. Give me a break. I'm going to touch upon several things here. And obviously, my last video, I covered the number 33, and here's another one with the coded 33, supposedly aboard the Artemis 2 capsule, as they're supposedly prior to making their way into outer space to the moon. That gets into misinformation and disinformation. There's a difference. Misinformation is information put out not intended to be incorrect. They're just people putting out information unknowingly that is wrong. And there's disinformation, which is intentional. We'll get into that. But first off, many people are mentioning this on social media with the so-called cable car that's making its way. And it's supposedly it's an escape for the astronauts. And give me a break. Let's get right to it with the actual footage. And let's get to it. It's right here. The so-called cable car. This is just an emergency basket. Supposedly, if something went wrong with the astronauts, supposedly in the capsule itself. Obviously, they're not. If you're even halfway awake, you should know that. But this has been put out there that they have these. This is a newer one. We'll get into that in a little bit. But first off, let's play this clip, and I'll break it down for those that know about the topic of the so-called, and there it is right here, the so-called escape pod that was used by the astronauts supposedly, and many truthers are pushing this misinformation. And there you see it's making its way on the zip line. Okay? And it goes black as I showed in my previous video. There it goes. You see it over here, right? Now, let's get a different angle here of these emergency escape pods. And if you really believe astronauts are on this with this flame, this enormous flame, they would be pretty crispy. They would be barbecued astronauts and left in all this smoke and all this heat. Absolutely not. And for truthers really to believe there are so-called astronauts that were even in here, you're absolutely out of your mind. You have no idea of what's taking place with this deception. There's nobody aboard inside the capsule. Never has been with all these past so-called space missions. Like I said, all these rockets just dump into the Bermuda Triangle off the coast of Florida. That very simple. And here's an image of the so-called emergency escape baskets for the astronauts. So this is nothing new. This is a newer version that's much larger, but in the past, you can see here, as they have the smaller ones, and people basically just didn't see them because they're so small. And now they have this for the Artemis 2. And again, it's much larger. That's why it's very visible. Once again, as you see here, as you see it going down the zip line. And again, people are pushing this. And imagine how hot it is here. They would be barbecued astronauts, like I said. Crispy. Extra crispy, if that was the case. And again, here's a video actually showing the emergency baskets being implemented at Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, of course 33 with the CC. And there you see it. They're showing this demo how it would operate in emergency situations, supposedly. Nonetheless, there's your dome symbolism. Always about the symbolism when it comes down to it. And that gets into this. Now, I believe many people are pushing this as misinformation. They're just ignorant. They really believe that there's going to be astronauts coming out and going in these pods. No. Like I said, these are empty capsules when it comes to the Artemis 2 and past missions. But that gets into disinformation. And that gets to what we see here. with the so-called astronauts aboard the Artemis 2 capsule. And this has been promoted heavily on social media. Let's take a listen here. And this is what I call a truth trap. This is done on purpose. So people share this, so-called truthers share this, and then once you're debunked, you look silly, and people are going to say you're wrong, you have bad discernment, and the so-called launch and the moon mission was real. Let's get right to it, what is shown here.
Did you see that? And I'm wondering,
what's up with the lettering behind this ball?
How are they doing with you so far from home?
Like, what? Wait for it.
I overheard from some of the conferences, and then what I enjoyed watching
What
with
is
my
this?
family.
So you see what looks like letters, and obviously supposedly CGI when it comes down to it with this. But I tell people constantly, you must check several sources. Go to the original source to find out. And unfortunately, a lot of so-called truthers are sharing this. Even people on my channel that have been around for many, many years are sharing this as legit. You got to step back, take a deep breath, relax, and look for the original source. Just don't go to Twitter and start sharing things. Do some research. And unfortunately, a lot of people that are not video creators, they don't know how to do research. All they know how to do is share information. And that's the problem with truth. There's not many real truth investigators. There's just people that repeat things and share things. You need to research things properly. Now let's take a look here. Here is the original video that aired on CNN. This is the original source. And do you see any type of green screen being used? No, absolutely not. And this is the exact time frame with the original CNN video at 4:20. And you don't see any type of CGI lettering. And to prove this is the same footage, take a look at the astronaut in the back. You see him as he passes the mic. It's all smoke and mirrors, but you see him pass the mic over, which they commonly do to make it look up and legit. Now, when you go back to this video, the one that has fakery, he's pushing the mic here again. It's the same video. So make no mistake about it. This is just intentional disinformation that's put out so truthers share it, and you look silly and you're debunked. And now, in the eyes of the people that believe in this garbage nonsense so-called space launch, are not going to be convinced. They're going to look at you as silly, and they're going to believe the mainstream narrative of these so-called space launches because you even help certify in their mind this is all in the up and up. So we have to be very careful what we share. We have to be real researchers and not jump the gun and just share things just because you saw it on social media.
John chapter 9, verse 25. Whereas once I was blind, now I can see. Now I can see.